everyone, it's Cassie here. Welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we're going to be making a really cute little slimline and we're going to be doing some foiling. So let's talk about what we're using. This is the Witch's Brew. It's a brand new stamp set. It's got some cute little sentiments, the darling images. We've got matching dies for everything. We also have our Slimline Spooky Scene Builder, and I'm going to keep that all together while I die cut out, but that is super cool. And then we have our Shimmering Winds foil plate. So it goes along with some other products that are already released, but and then we have our brand new blender brushes, which I love those. We've got some foil. We have our machine, which is the Glimmer Hot Foil System by Spellbinders. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on and wait for that to start getting ready. And while that's heating up, we're going to start cutting out our foil. It doesn't bother me, or it's not a big deal to go ahead and put your plate on top of your system while it's heating up. It's not going to hurt it. It's not going to overheat it. It'll be fine. And while we wait for that to heat up, I'll run that Slimline Spooky Scene Builder through the die cutting machine. We've got all those pieces die cut out. I'll move those off to the side. You'll see that my light has turned on, so I'm going to hit the timer button. That's going to blink, and when that stops blinking, it will be ready to foil. I'm using the Opal Glimmer Foil. This one is hard to see, which is the shiny side, which is the the pretty side, which is the foiling side. You definitely want to make sure you get that right. So what I try and tell myself is just to make sure that you keep it all down, because the pretty side's always on the outside of these rolls. So I'm just keeping everything down on my quick trimmer, and I'm just using the little blade that comes with it for cutting the foil and the little thing that lines it all up. So I've kept everything down. I measured my plate. You'll see that my timer button has stopped blinking. It does have an automatic shutoff switch if you sit there long enough, which is a great safety feature, but you definitely want to work quick enough so that it doesn't do that. So I'm going to cut down my foil, keeping everything down the way that it was. I'm going to stick this down on top of my foiling plate, pop that out before I put my paper down, and then I'll put my paper down, which is my Slimline paper that measures 4 inches by 8.5 inches, and then I'll grab my plates and slowly run this through my die cutting machine. And then you'll see what that looks like. I'll put all that stuff back, and then I'll peel away my foil and take a look at that. It's really pretty. We're going to make it pop even more by using some inks. So I'll put everything away, make sure everything cools down, and then we're going to bring in some inks. So I'm using the Electropop. I don't even know if these babies are available anymore, but I'm going to use these. If you are careful and you don't like rub really hard, you can do actually quite a few techniques over your foiling. I did rub a little hard down there at the bottom. You'll see it did kind of pull some of that foiling away. But if you're careful, and I will say these brushes are incredibly soft. These brand new blender buddies are super soft. And they work great. They grab lots of color. So all the colors that I'm using, that first one was Orange Glow, then we used Loud Lime, and this next one is Screamin' Green. I'm actually going to have a color for every one of my color families. So I had one for orange, one for yellow, I have one for green, and then I'm just going to keep blending this color right over the top. Like I said, if you're careful, you can blend right over your foiling. Thankfully, Miles didn't come in any sooner while we were working with the foiling plates. That always worries me. I just try to make sure they're out of the way and not interested at all if I've got my hot plate going. All right, I'm going to bring in another blender buddy, and we're going to use some black soot on the edges. It'll just kind of subdue everything. You'll notice I'm not doing the best job of blending that black on there. I'm getting some brush lines. That's technically my own fault because I am not starting on the glass mat too well. I'm just kind of blending it right onto the edge. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to bring in those colors again, and we're just going to blend that out a little bit. And plus I'm going to need to bring in a Slimline die to cut everything down. But I'm not worried about it. This is all my background, so it wasn't intentional, but I certainly wasn't careful, if that makes any sense. So then we're blending our green over the top again. It's bringing in some of that black and deepening up some of that green, which is cool, but I love that lime. It is so bright. Or I guess that one's the Screamin' Green. And I love the lime, even though it's more of a yellow. It's super pretty, super pretty. So we're, like I said, we're just blending. You'll notice that by blending that color over the top of the foil, it's kind of making the foil look that same color. Don't worry, we'll take care of that as well. But we'll work in our last color, which is that Orange Glow. And then I'm just going to take a microfiber cloth. You'll see I blended a little too hard down there. And I'm just going to slightly buff away the color that is on top of the foil. And there you go. It looks pretty good. All right, so we are building a scene, but before we get to that, we do need to cut this down because remember this was 4 inches by 8.5 inches. So I need it to be 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So I'm going to use that modern slimline or modern embossed slimline die. Die cut that out, and then I'll kind of look and see how I want these pieces to be put on there. And then we're going to go ahead and stamp out our darling little Witch's Brew images. I'm using my fingers to kind of condition those a little bit because I haven't used these stamps yet. And then I'm going to use some blackout ink by Ink on 3 and stamp this down onto some Express It cardstock. We're going to be doing some alcohol marker coloring. I'm going to need to stamp it a couple times. As you can see, it didn't stamp perfectly the first time. And then I'm going to bring in my Olo markers. These are alcohol markers. They're brand new to the market. And I'm just putting down that first color. You'll see I've got all the caps up there for you as I use them. So this is the V2.4. And I wanted to stick with brighter colors since our background was really bright. And then all of the silhouette pieces from our Slimline Spooky Scene Builder are obviously black. So I really wanted her to pop, and I wanted her to pop with those background colors. So we've got this almost like a neon purple. And we're going to bring in some neon green as well, but I'm blending back. So what I do is I put down my lightest color, bring in that dark color, and then I bring in that light color again just to do a little blending so that the lines aren't so harsh. It's the same thing that I do with my Copics or my Everblends. Just blend it out like that. And then for her skin tone, I wanted it to be a little bit ashy, almost zombie-like. I don't know why, but I picked the 07.1. And then we have the O 7.3. So this would be a perfect zombie color too. And then for her hair, we're going to use that lime neon green. So I've got the YG 2.3. We're going to use that for her bubbly that she's making, her brew. We'll use it on her collar. We're actually eventually going to use it on the little collar of our kitty too. Then we've got YG 2.5 is our darker green. Then I wanted her lips to be that dark purple, so I brought that color back in. Moving on to the Cauldron, we have CG5. That's going to be our base color. And I'll bring in the CG7 for a mid-tone. And just using flicking motions. Obviously there would be some light cast because we have a flame underneath. Not doing the best job of working around that flame though. And then our darkest shade will be CG9. So just bringing in just a bit of that. And then I'll work backwards and blend everything out. Just come in with that CG7, then our CG5. All right, then we're going to use those same colors for our little kitty. I know, not like me, but we're going to go ahead and make him a black cat. So I'm just using the CG5 and our CG7. Even though the CG9 cap is the one that's there. And then I'll blend that out with the CG5. And then we'll bring in that lime green again for the collar. And I did get a little crazy, so I brought in the blender, or the colorless blender, so I could blend that color back in. All right, bringing in those matching dies, we'll tack those down with a little bit of mint tape, run that through our die cutting machine, and then we can start building our scene after I do a little splatter. Because I used that purple, I wanted to bring in some purple in the background. So I have a shimmery purple paint, and I added a little water, splattered that on our background, and I'm going to use a little bit of it to color on our witch herself. And this will just add a little bit of shimmer. And because I'm not using a ton of water, it's okay to color on top of this. It's not like you could watercolor on this paper per se, but because I'm hardly using any water and just kind of blending that out, it's not going to pill the paper any. So just keep that in mind. You can add little accents of paint here and there if that's something that you want to do. I like to do that from time to time, usually with the shimmer paints, but check it out. It's got some nice shimmer to it. And then I'll show you on our background. Almost looks black there, but I promise you in real life it is a pretty purple. All right, now building our scene. We'll use our Crafty Gluefriend, and we're going to tack everything down onto our base. And so now it's going to look like that Shimmering Winds is coming up from the background, and it's going to go perfectly since she is brewing up something in her pot. And then we'll just tack down our trees. Now, because I did not cut our dies apart, there is one die inside the tree, And so it did cut a hole in this tree, but all I'm going to do is take that piece and just stick it right back in because it's a silhouetted background. You're not going to really be able to tell because I'm also layering stuff on top of it. But just be aware, I didn't cut everything apart only because there really was no need. I knew I was going to cut it all out of black, and they're pieced together pretty well on there, minus the one. I mean, you could just cut that out of there, but I didn't because I thought, I'll just glue it back in. And then I've got all the rest of my pieces in my tidy tray, so I'll just pick some of those out. I'm going to put some of the tombstones down. We're going to use those big mounds like they are some ground, and they'll just kind of stand out a little bit. Just kind of figuring that out. But I do have some pieces that are going to be hanging off the side, and that's okay. I feel like that gives the illusion that there's more going on outside of the card. So I'm okay with that. We'll just trim that down later. But I'm going to take some of these tombstones. I want to make sure that I keep the center open because that's where our little witch is going to be. But again, using our Crafty Gluefriend for everything else. Pop that behind those mounds of ground. We also have an owl and some nesting. So I'm going to put the nesting up in the tree. Have that hanging off the edge. Pop out the little eyes for our owl and do my best to kind of put that over the top of where that lime green is so his eyes will pop and look like they're lime green as well. And then we have another little piece of nesting that I'll just stick on top of that. I don't use all of the pieces from our Slimline Spooky Scene Builder, but you have a lot of options. And now I'm just going to use foam tape. I did stamp a sentiment off screen that says a special brew for you. And then I put all these foam squares on the back of our sentiment and our images to include our little kitty. Struggled with where to put him, but I eventually just settle on down below by the tombstone. And then we're going to get our base ready. So our base measures 7 inches by 8.5 inches. I'm going to score that at 3.5 inches. So closed, like I said before, will be 3.5 by 8.5 inches. So we'll just score that, close it up, and then we're going to glue down our panel to our base. I do have a couple of pieces from when I trimmed down that panel, that background panel. So I'm going to put those on the inside. I saved those, and I thought that was a good way to bring the outside in. So we'll just stick those down on there. On both sides, frames up our little message to the recipient. And then I am going to stamp out another sentiment as well as our main image again. And you'd think I would have learned from a few weeks ago to probably use like my Misty, but I didn't. I used a stamp block and it doesn't stamp perfectly. But again, we work with that. That's okay. So there's a little gap there. We're just going to put our sentiment right over the top of it. Almost looks like it was done on purpose. But knowing me, you know it wasn't. So I'll stamp that down, wishing you a happy Halloween. And that's going to finish off our card today. It was a longer process, but I think this one was such a fun card, so fun to make. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check out all that Trinity Stamps has going on over on their blog, Facebook page, and Instagram for more crafty inspiration. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.